Hello everyone, it's Theme Park Avenue, I'm Eric. On August 15th, 1843, Tivoli Gardens opened in Copenhagen, Denmark. It was one of the first amusement parks ever, nearly 180 years old now, and in 1951, Walt Disney himself visited the park, and it actually inspired a lot of Disneyland, which was in the planning phase at the time. This is a review and overview of the whimsical wonderland Tivoli Gardens that inspired what is now the world's most popular theme park. In this video, I will give an overview of Tivoli Gardens and review certain aspects of it, so if you are planning a visit, you know what kind of things to expect and whether or not it's worth going to. One quick note, I'm American and I may struggle with some of the pronunciations, but I'll be giving the English and Danish names for most of these rides. And speaking of rides, let's start by talking about the roller coasters. For those who like roller coasters more than anything else in the park, this may be a bit of a disappointment to you, as there are a total of 4, technically 3 roller coasters if you don't count powered coasters. I personally think the roller coasters are very good. However, having 4 total, partially due to the small size of the park, might be something that means if you're a thrill-seeker roller coaster enthusiast especially, you're going to think other parks such as Bakken might be better. But let's talk about each roller coaster. Daemonen, or Demon, is a floorless roller coaster by Bolliger and Mabillard. Much smaller than others, but it has a creative first drop, and the inversions are pretty forceful. Some say it's just kind of an average ride that happens, but I thought it was more forceful than some said, and the way it weaves through the beautiful Chinese area adds a lot to the ride in a way pretty much no other floorless coaster can say. So I think it's a pretty good ride overall. Not necessarily amazing, but definitely one of my favorite attractions in the park. Rutschebanen is the wooden roller coaster in the park. It's also known as roller coaster. It's well over 100 years old. It is a scenic railway, meaning there's a brakeman on it, and this one weaves through a mountain structure. It gives surprising airtime. It is glass smooth, and as far as roller coasters of that age go, I don't think there are any I like as much. Granted, I've been on very few that are close to that age, but very few wooden coasters are as enjoyable experiences as this one, and it's probably the best attraction of the park now, due to another one closing, which I'll get to later. Then there is Mælkevejen, or the Milky Way Express. This is a Mock Rides powered coaster, meaning it's pulled along the track, not by gravity, but using electricity, so it is powered, and that means it's not technically a roller coaster. It used to be a ride called Oden Expressen, and back then it was a lot more intense, but I hear this one's more comfortable for guests, and the way it goes around the area of the park that it's in is fun and nice. And then there is Kamelen, the Camel Trail. This family roller coaster is more kiddie coaster, but because of how fast and intense this kiddie coaster is, I'm not joking, I consider it more family coaster than kiddie. It's pretty frightening, and honestly very much a fun ride. So when you have these 4 roller coasters, that might not seem like the most impressive collection. Compared to other parks, particularly in Europe for example, you have Phantasialand, which has on top of rides that are somewhat comparable to none of these. You have Terran, Fly, Black Mamba, and a whole lot more. 4 is not a huge collection of roller coasters, but nonetheless, I think they're fun rides, but it's not a huge deal because the thrill rides outside of roller coasters more than compensate. There are a ton, and they are excellent. Aquila is the kind of Zamperla air scooter, similar to the one at Six Flags Fiesta Texas is fairly new. It's excellent. Disorienting fun, and there's not a whole lot else I need to say about it. It's becoming a more common model, but this was among the first, and I think it's an excellent ride. Fata Morgana, this one has a wild side and a mild side essentially. One is kind of just an overlook, and then the other one spins much faster but still gives you an overlook. You go up pretty high, and it's a kind of husk condor that's just very unique. Having the 2 different thrill levels makes it a lot better, and it's a pretty much unmatched view. Then you have Himmelskibet, or the Skyship, which is your Starflyer ride. You're sitting in a chair with some chains on it. You go pretty high up, and you get a view of Copenhagen and Tivoli Gardens. Views of this park are always great, and this one might be the best of them all. Then you have Monsunen, or the Monsoon. This one is the kind of magic carpet type ride where it goes up, down, in through a circle, but it's more vertical than horizontal. It's fairly thrilling. It looks beautiful, and there's not much else to say about this one, but it is worth the ride. Then you have Der Gilden Tarn, or the Golden Tower. The drop is pretty solid too. I think it's one of the better drop towers out there, honestly, and definitely an enjoyable one. Then you have Gallehen, or the galley ships. It's similar to the Matterhorn type rides, not Matterhorn bobsleds, but more the spinning around ones. It looks nice, of course, like many of the other rides do, and it gets pretty good speed, so it's definitely a fun one. And then there is Tic Tac, which is themed to clocks and not breath mints, but it is a very interesting one. It's similar to these rides such as Zero Gravity, which is over at the Galaxyland area of the West Edmonton Mall, or similar to some rides at Nickelodeon Universe parks, but it spins on a different axis as well. So while you can loop yourself, you can also be spinning around horizontally, and the entire track that the things are sitting on is also doing that. The clock above it adds to the disorientingness, and the lights are pretty crazy. It might be the most insane flat ride in the park now. Then there's Radio Bellerne, which is the bumper cars. Some of the hardest hitting ones, and there's a cohesive theme to radio with these bumper cars, so I enjoy that. Now there is one other thrill ride that has to be mentioned. Vertigo. Vertigo is now closed due to having a very low capacity. But when it was open, it was without exaggeration, the greatest non-roller coaster ride I'd ever experienced. It gets 60 mph speeds, which doesn't seem like much compared to some roller coasters especially. But being a flat ride that spins on 3 different axes, it was the most disorienting and insane experience I've had. I loved it. I can see why it's gone, but I kind of wish it wasn't. It was the star attraction of the park for me, and kind of elevated it to a whole other level. I know the park is still excellent now, but Vertigo was definitely a highlight, and it's a shame that it's gone. But fortunately, there is more to the park than Vertigo, and even if you don't like thrilling rides, the family rides are fantastic. You have Den Flyende Kuvert, which is the flying trunk. I do apologize for that pronunciation. I just kind of rushed that one, and dang, I did a really bad job. But nonetheless, the flying trunk is a wonderful dark ride. It has a very unique ride system. You sit inside of, as you may guess, a trunk, and you're kind of going upward on a spiral and then downward the same way. It's an omni-mover type ride, and you go past several scenes from Hans Christian Andersen's stories. Hans Christian Andersen is a very famous person from around the area. That's where he was born, where he was raised. He is associated with Copenhagen and Denmark, and he was a wonderful children's book author. You may know him for Ugly Duckling and Little Mermaid and the Snow Queen, and a whole lot more. The scenes are not high budget, but they have a very distinct style. It's like a much more appealing version of It's a Small World, and a much more cohesive one at that. And as you go past each scene, there's a brief bit of narration to sum up the stories that you're going by. It's the kind of thing that really brings you back to your childhood if you read some of the stories or familiar with them. And I think it's just a beautiful and honestly, just a charming ride. It's basically the best version of It's a Small World you could ever get. I loved it, and it's one of my favorite rides in the park. And then you have the other dark ride, Minen, or The Mine, which is a more shooting type dark ride. You don't really shoot that much with it, but the scenes are nice. You're underneath Rutschebanen, which is pretty impressive. You go past a large dragon statue. It's a water ride type thing, and I just feel it's very fun. I do prefer Flying Trunk, but the Mine is also an excellent one. Then you have Dragabadene, the dragon boats. This one, you pilot your own boats. You're in a nice tranquil lake with the Chinese area and Daemonen right behind you, and the views are pretty much unmatched. I think the most photographed area of the park is this lake with the dragon boats, with the Chinese area behind it. It's wonderful, photogenic, and being in that lake, that's something special. Then you have the Ferris wheel, known as Ballongen or the balloon swing. It's a small one, but it's very aesthetically pleasing and very fun. Then you have the swing carousel, which is a wave swinger, and there are several other rides, some exclusively for kids, some that adults can enjoy as well. And even though the park is quite small, the ride collection is pretty large, and all of the rides really serve their purpose well when you have top-tier dark rides, insane thrilling rides, and a few good roller coasters. I think it's one of the best ride lineups as a whole, and I love it. But there is another aspect that's done even better than the rides: the theming. This is without question the most beautiful park I've been to. It's stellar. One thing that stands out is location. It is in the middle of beautiful Copenhagen, Denmark, one of the nicest looking European cities. And the fact that it's kind of small and quaint means they're able to keep a very nice cohesive thing throughout every ride going. The thing that stands out the most is that most of the flat rides have very similar color schemes. It's just 4 or so colors, somewhat pale and a little muted, but they're simple, charming, and it works wonders. Then you have the gardens. Walking through them to get from ride to ride is an absolute must. They are beautifully landscaped. There's peacocks walking around. It's colorful, vibrant, and hard to beat. Then you have the Chinese area, which I was mentioning earlier, and that is breathtaking. Small but incredibly well themed, and one of my favorite themed areas ever. And over at Rutschebanen, you have a mountain that was constructed. It looks wonderful, and this is one of the most well-known inspirations at Disneyland. The Matterhorn bobsleds did take direct inspiration from Rutschebanen. It's a very different ride, of course, but both of them weaving through mountains, that is where the inspiration can be seen at Disneyland. And even the entrance walls, something that's not really that special at any other park, are grand, have wonderful architecture, and they really set you up for a great experience. The atmosphere, something I've talked about being a little different before than just theming. It's really about how you feel when you walk around the park. It's unmatched. The park's charm cannot be beat. No Disney park comes close to that for me. And the staff are top tier. They work hard, they're friendly, it's great. And I did not have any bad experience involving guests. I've had that at some parks before. But the fact that all the people were nice, that meant the day was not ruined by outside things. And that is definitely something that means an experience at Tivoli Gardens is very likely to be a happy one. It's a small park with tons of character and a very lively but still quaint, charming feel, and I love it. It's similar to what many of you said the original Disneyland is, smaller than the other parks in that chain, but still has an unmatched charm and is better than the others as a result. I can't compare for sure, but Tivoli Gardens is excellent. Another aspect I think I should definitely touch on is the shows. There are several show venues: the Tivoli Concert Hall, the Glass Hall Theater, and the Pantomime Theater. You can see concerts of all genres, dance performances, theatrical shows, and many things that'll satisfy children and adults. Food is another thing I'll quickly touch on. The food is excellent and diverse. The Tivoli Food Hall has several quick options. They're affordable and they can satisfy pretty much anyone who likes any type of food. For affordable pastries and desserts, Copenhagen is probably the best place to go. And if you're looking for a higher end sit-down restaurant type experience, Restaurant Grofton is definitely the way to go. Now, I don't really talk about merchandise much in my park reviews, but I'll do it here. Tivoli's merchandise is abundant and can satisfy pretty much any guest who wants any type of thing. The main souvenir here is balloons from Belle and Husset, because the balloons are pretty iconic and kind of a part of Tivoli. So I do recommend, if you're looking for a souvenir, you probably want to get that above anything else. But that's pretty much every aspect I want to touch on. So overall, you should visit Tivoli Gardens. That's not a question for me. If you like thrills, there's plenty to satisfy you. And if you like a themed, charming experience, I don't think anything is better. It's one of my favorite parks ever, even as someone who tends to prefer roller coasters above all else. And it is my Disneyland. It is the park that after going as a bit of a younger person, it stuck with me. And I would love to go back. And I honestly kind of wish I lived near it so I could go over and over again. It's an unbeatable experience. And even if you aren't super into theme parks, honestly, I think if you are going to Europe, period, this is the one theme park that you should try to go to. Because the experience is still very much like a tour of beautiful European architecture or similar, but it still gives you the fun of a theme park. So overall, I would give this park a 10 out of 10 if I had to give a number score, and you should definitely visit. Not much else to say. If you have any questions about it, let me know in the comments below, and subscribe for more theme park content. Like this video if you enjoyed. There's a whole lot more on the way. I'll see you next time.